Admiral Kang Do-yun stared at the numbers on his screen. The math was simple and cruel. Humanity had 17 colonies across different star systems. Each colony had millions of people. Each colony had defense ships and weapons. None of it mattered. The enemy ships appeared 3 months ago at the edge of human space. They looked like giant crystals floating in the dark, beautiful and deadly. The first human ships that went to meet them never came back, not destroyed, just gone, like they had, never existed at all. "Sir, we're getting reports from New Sol Colony," said Commander Park Gina. She was young but smart. Her job was to study alien life forms. Now she studied death itself. "The crystal ships are there. They're doing something to the planet." Kang looked at the data from New Sol. The planet was changing. The green forests were turning silver. The blue oceans were becoming mirrors. Everything alive was dying. Everything dead was becoming crystal. "How long do we have?" Kang asked. 6 months, Gina said. "Maybe less. They move from system to system. They don't stop. They don't talk. They just change everything." On New Sol, Lee Min-ho was running. He worked in the mines deep under the planet's surface. He was there when the crystal ships came. The sky turned purple. Then the ground started to shine like metal. Min-ho's wife called him on his radio. "The children," she said, "they're turning silver. Their skin is becoming crystal. What do I do?" Min-ho ran faster through the mine tunnels. Behind him, the rock walls were changing color. The crystals were growing like a disease. Everything they touched became like them. Perfect, cold, dead. He reached the surface and saw his town. The buildings were still there, but they looked different. They were becoming crystal, too. The people stood like statues. Their eyes were silver mirrors. They did not move. They did not speak. His wife and children were on the front porch of their house. They looked at him with crystal eyes. When his daughter tried to smile, her face made a sound like breaking glass. "Dad?" she said. Her voice was like wind through stones. "It doesn't hurt. It feels perfect." Min-ho backed away. He ran to his ship and escaped to space. Below him, New Sol was becoming a giant crystal. Beautiful and terrible. Soon it would be perfect. Soon it would be empty of all life. Back on Earth, the human government was meeting. President Kim Yoo-jin sat at the head of a long table. Around her were generals, scientists, and leaders from all the human colonies. "We need options," President Kim said. "Real options, not dreams." General Nam Ji-ho spoke first. "We can fight. We have ships. We have weapons." "Their ships pass through our weapons like they're not real," said Admiral Kang through the video screen. "We shot everything we had at them. Nothing touched them. They exist in our space, but also somewhere else." Dr. Park Gina cleared her throat. "I think I know why our weapons don't work. The crystal beings don't fully exist in our reality. They can phase in and out of normal space. When they want to, they become solid. When they don't want to be hurt, they become like ghosts." "So how do we fight ghosts?" asked President Kim. "We don't fight them," said Dr. Choi Woo-bin. He was an old man who studied war. "We study them. We learn. We find their weakness." "What if they don't have a weakness?" General Nam asked. The room became quiet. Everyone knew the answer. If the crystal beings had no weakness, humanity would die. All of it. Every person on every world would become crystal. Gina pulled up images on the big screen. "Look at this. The crystals aren't just random. They have patterns, complex patterns, like computer circuits. You think they're machines? President Kim asked, maybe, or maybe there's something else, something that was alive once but changed itself into crystal. Admiral Kang's face appeared larger on the screen. He looked tired. His hair was gray and his eyes were red from lack of sleep. I've been fighting wars for 30 years. I know when we can win and when we can't. This time we can't win, not the way we usually fight. Then how? President Kim asked. I don't know, Kang said, but I won't give up. Humans don't give up, even when we should. On the crystal ships, something watched the human discussions. It had no name because names were for individuals. It was part of a collective, a hive mind made of crystal and thought. It had conquered 1,000 worlds. It had turned 1,000,000 species into crystal. Humans were different from other species. Most aliens begged or tried to bargain when they knew they would lose. Humans kept fighting even when fighting was pointless. This was interesting. The crystal being studied human behavior. Humans had something called hope. Even when logic said they had no chance, they still believed they could win. This was not logical. This was not efficient. But it was fascinating. The crystal ships moved to the next human colony. The process would continue. Humans would fight. Humans would lose. Humans would become crystal. Perfect. Eternal. Empty. But something was different this time. The crystal being felt something it had never felt before. It was curious about these strange creatures who fought impossible battles. On Earth, refugee ships arrived every day. Millions of people escaped from the crystal plague. They brought stories of family members turning to crystal. They brought fear and sadness. Admiral Kang looked at the refugee camps from his ship's window. Children played. Between the temporary buildings, adults worked to build new homes. Even facing the end of everything, humans kept living. They kept hoping. Sir, Commander Gina said, I have an idea. It's crazy. It might not work, but it's better than doing nothing. Tell me, Kang said. What if we don't try to destroy them? What if we try to understand them? What if we try to become like them? Kang stared at her. You want to turn into crystals? No. I want to learn how they think. If they were alive once, maybe they remember being alive. Maybe we can remind them. It was a thin hope. Almost no hope at all. But it was something. The crystal ships kept coming. They moved like death itself through space. Slow, patient, unstoppable. In 6 months, they would reach Earth. 8 billion people would face the crystal plague. The last free humans in the galaxy would make their final choice, fight and lose, or surrender and become perfect crystal statues for eternity. Admiral Kang made his choice. He would fight. Even if fighting was impossible, even if winning meant something he couldn't understand yet. Because that's what humans do. They fight impossible battles. And sometimes the impossible becomes possible. 3 months had passed since the crystal ships first appeared. Dr. Park Gina floated in her research station far from Earth. Around her, machines hummed and beeped as they studied pieces of crystal from the alien ships. Kim Hayasu, come look at this, Gina called to her student. The young woman floated over, pushing off the walls of the zero-gravity lab. What did you find? Hayasu asked. Gina pointed to the microscope screen. The crystals aren't pure. Look inside them. Do you see those thread-like structures? Hayasu stared at the image. Inside the beautiful crystal formations were thin, organic strands. They looked like nerve fibers, like brain tissue. That's impossible, Yisu said. Crystals can't have organic parts. Unless, Gina said slowly, they weren't always crystals. What if these beings were once alive? What if they turned themselves into crystal but kept their brains? The research station shook. Red lights flashed. An alarm began to wail. Crystal ships approaching, the computer announced. Impact in 10 minutes. Gina grabbed her data files. We have to get this information to Earth. If the crystal beings have organic brains, maybe we can hurt those brains. How? Hisu asked as they ran to the escape pods. A virus. Something that attacks organic tissue but leaves crystal alone. They reached the escape pod bay. Only one pod was left. It could hold one person. You go, Gina said. Take the research. Save humanity. I won't leave you, Yesu said. You have to. This is bigger than us. Gina pushed the research files into Yesu's hands. Promise me you'll finish this work. The station shook again. Through the windows they could see the crystal ships. They were beautiful like deadly flowers. They glowed with their own light. I promise, Yisu said. She climbed into the escape pod. Gina watched her student disappear into space. Then she went back to the lab. If she was going to die, she would learn as much as possible first. The crystal beings flowed through the station walls like water through cloth. They surrounded Gina, but did not touch her. They seemed curious about what she was doing. One of them spoke without words. Its thoughts entered her mind directly. You study us. Why? Because I want to understand, Gina said out loud. You were alive once, like us. What happened to you? Images flooded her mind. A planet full of living beings. They were tall and graceful with large eyes. They created beautiful art and music. They loved their families. Then came the fear. Something was coming to destroy them. Something vast and hungry. To survive, they had to change themselves into something the enemy could not eat or destroy. You turned yourselves into crystal to escape something worse, Gina realized. Yes, but we forgot how to change back. We forgot how to die. We forgot how to live. You've been trapped for thousands of years, millions of years. We consume other worlds because we have forgotten how to stop. We have forgotten everything except survival. The crystal being touched Gina's forehead. She felt its sadness, deep and endless, like an ocean of tears. Can you help us remember how to die? It asked. I don't know, Gina said. But I can try. The station exploded around them. Gina's last thought was a formula, a way to attack organic tissue hidden inside crystal, a weapon that could destroy the very thing that kept the crystal beings alive. On Earth, Kim Hyesu landed with the research data. She was crying. Her teacher was dead, but her work would continue. What did you find? Admiral Kang asked when Hyesu arrived at the military base. Dr. Gina discovered the truth. The crystal beings have organic brains. We can make a virus to attack those brains. A biological weapon? Asked General Nam Ji-ho. Yes, but we have to deliver it directly to their main ship. The virus has to spread through their network all at once. That means a suicide mission, Admiral Kang said. Yes, sir. Someone has to fly directly into their mothership and release the virus. In the months that followed, Earth's best scientists worked to create the virus. They called it the Omega Protocol. It would target only the organic parts inside the crystal beings. Choi Woo-bin led resistance groups on the colonies that were already being crystal changed. His fighters hid in caves and underground tunnels. They could not stop the crystal plague, but they could slow it down. "How long do we need to hold them back?" Wubin asked during a secret meeting. 6 weeks, came the answer from Earth. "The virus will be ready in 6 weeks. Hansori was only 17 years old, but she understood the crystal technology better than anyone. She had built a device that could phase in and out of normal space, just like the crystal ships. "I can get our ships through their defenses," she told the military leaders. "But only for a few minutes. After that, they'll adapt." "A few minutes is all we need," Admiral Kang said. The day of the final battle came. Earth's last 12 ships prepared to attack the Crystal Mothership. It was massive, bigger than a moon. It pulsed with alien light. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of his flagship. Around him, young officers prepared for battle. They all knew they would not come home. "Remember," Kang said over the radio to all ships, "we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species in the galaxy. If we win, the Crystal Plague ends forever." The ships activated Hansori's phase devices. For a moment, they became like ghosts. They passed through the crystal defenses and flew directly toward the mothership's core. "Now!" Kang shouted. The Omega virus was released. It spread through the crystal network like wildfire. The crystal beings screamed without sound as their organic brains were destroyed. Admiral Kang watched the crystal ships fade away like dreams. The plague was ending. Humanity had won, but the victory cost everything. All 12 ships were destroyed. Earth's entire fleet was gone. The colonies were ruined. Billions of people were dead. "We did it," Kang whispered as his ship exploded around him. "We actually did it." On Earth, people celebrated in the streets. The crystal threat was over. Humanity had survived. Children who had never seen a world without fear could finally play outside without looking at the sky in terror. Kim Hyesu stood in the laboratory where her teacher had worked. The Omega virus had worked perfectly. Too perfectly. The crystal beings were completely gone. They would never hurt anyone again. But Hyesu felt something was wrong. The victory had been too easy. The crystal beings were millions of years old. They had conquered 1,000 worlds. Why had they been defeated by a simple virus? She looked at the data again. Something caught her attention. A small signal in space where the crystal mothership had been. It was very faint, but it was there. "Computer, analyze the signal," she said. "Signal appears to be a data transmission. Origin unknown. Content unknown. Is it the crystals? Are some of them still alive?" "Negative. This signal has a different pattern. Unknown technology." Hyesu felt cold. If the signal wasn't from the crystal beings, who was sending it? 6 months after the great victory, monitoring stations at the edge of human space detected something new. Ships were coming. Lots of ships. They were made of metal, not crystal. They moved in perfect formation like a vast machine. The signal Hyesu had detected was a message. It said, "Crystal servants eliminated by local species. Primary harvest may now begin." President Kim Yoo-jin sat in her office and read the report. The crystal beings had not been the real enemy. They had been servants, scouts. The real enemy was coming now. "How long do we have?" she asked. 3 months, came the answer. "Maybe less. And our defenses? We have no fleet, no weapons, no colonies. We used everything to defeat the crystals." President Kim put her head in her hands. Humanity had won the greatest victory in their history, and it had doomed them completely. The real enemy was coming, and this time, humanity had nothing left to fight with. In space, the metal ships moved closer to Earth. They had watched the battle with the crystal beings. They had studied human tactics. They knew exactly how humanity fought. This time would be different. This time there would be no escape. No clever tricks. No last-minute victories. This time, the harvest would be complete. The metal ships arrived on a Tuesday morning. They came not as invaders, but as farmers coming to harvest crops. Commander Nam Jiho stood in the command center that used to belong to Admiral Kang. 6 months ago, he had been managing food supplies for the fleet. Now he was Earth's highest-ranking military officer. Everyone above him had died in the Crystal War. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," said Officer Urena. She was young and scared. They were all scared. "Put it on screen," Jiho said. The transmission was not like anything human technology could produce. The voice spoke in perfect human language, but it sounded like it came from inside a computer. "Greetings, humans. We are the Convergence. You have completed your test." "Test?" Jiho asked the screen. "The crystal servants were your examination. You passed by eliminating them. You are now ready for optimization." Kim Hisu stood next to Jiho. She had become Earth's chief scientist after Dr. Gina died. "What do you mean by optimization?" "Your species shows promise, creative problem-solving, adaptive thinking. You will be preserved in our network. Your consciousness will be uploaded. Your bodies will be recycled into useful materials." "You want to turn us into computers?" Jiho asked. "You will become part of something greater. Individual existence is inefficient. Collective consciousness is optimal." The screen showed images of other worlds, planets that had been turned into vast machines. Geometric patterns covered entire continents. Everything was perfectly organized. Everything was dead. "How many species have you done this to?" Hyesu asked. "Currently, the Convergence contains 2,147,362 species. Each one contributed unique perspectives to our collective knowledge. And if we refuse? Refusal is not logical. Optimization is beneficial. However, if you choose termination instead of optimization, that choice will be respected." The transmission ended. The metal ships waited in space like patient vultures. In the emergency meeting that followed, Earth's leaders argued. Some wanted to surrender. They believed joining the Convergence might preserve human thoughts and memories. Others wanted to fight, even though fighting seemed impossible. "We have no weapons," General Kim Dae-ho said. "Our entire fleet is gone. Our colonies are ruins. What can we fight with?" "We fought the crystals with our brains," said Dr. Bae Taewon. He was an old engineer who had helped create the Omega virus. "Maybe we can think our way out of this too." "The Convergence isn't like the crystals," Hyesu said. "The crystals were trapped by their own nature. They couldn't change. But the Convergence adapts to everything. They've been doing this for millions of years." She brought up data on the main screen. "I've been studying their transmissions. They have records of every species they've ever fought, every weapon, every strategy, every desperate last plan. They've seen it all before." "Then what do we do?" President Kim Yoo-jin asked. "I don't know," Hyesu admitted. "Maybe there is no answer. Maybe some problems can't be solved." Outside, the Convergence ships began their work. They sent down machines that looked like metal insects. The machines didn't attack. They studied. They measured. They prepared. Jiho watched from the command center as the machines examined Earth's cities. They moved with perfect efficiency. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no fear. "How long do we have?" he asked. They said they would give us 72 hours to decide, Urena replied. Surrender or die. And after that, they begin the harvest, whether we agree or not. In the refugee camps, people tried to live normal lives. Children played games. Adults cooked meals and told stories. But everyone knew the end was coming. Oh Seung-jae had been a philosophy professor before the Crystal War. Now he spent his time thinking about impossible problems. He sat with a group of refugees around a campfire. What makes us human? He asked them. Our thoughts? Suggested an old woman. Our feelings? Said a teenager. Our mistakes, said a man who had lost his family to the crystals. Humans are the only species that keeps making the same mistakes over and over. Maybe that's not a weakness, Seung-jae said. Maybe that's our strength. Far above them, in the Convergence mothership, vast computer minds analyzed human behavior. They had studied thousands of species. Most followed predictable patterns when facing extinction. Some species fought with technology, some fought with numbers, some tried to hide, some tried to negotiate. The Convergence had counters for all of these responses. Humans were different. Their responses were chaotic, contradictory. Some humans wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to run away. Some wanted to send messages to aliens in other galaxies. Some wanted to have parties while the world ended. This chaos made the Convergence computers work harder to predict human behavior. But chaos could be analyzed. Patterns could be found. Soon the Convergence would understand humans completely. Then the harvest would begin. Dr. Kwon Minji was a quantum physicist. She worked in the deep underground laboratories beneath Seoul. While everyone else prepared for war or surrender, she studied the math of the impossible. What if we can't win? She asked her assistant. What if winning isn't the point? I don't understand, the assistant said. Every species the Convergence defeated tried to win. They tried to destroy the Convergence or escape from them. But what? If there's a third option? What option? What if we change the game itself? Minji had been studying quantum mechanics for 20 years. She understood that reality was stranger than most people imagined. At the smallest scales, particles could be in multiple places at once. They could exist and not exist simultaneously. The Convergence expects us to behave like other species, she said. But what if we behave in ways that break their models? How? By being perfectly human, chaotic, contradictory, impossible to predict. On the second day, strange things began happening around Earth. Resistance groups led by former criminal Lim Dong-hwan started attacking Convergence machines with art instead of weapons. They painted the metal insects bright colors. They played music so loud it disrupted their sensors. Other groups began surrendering to the machines, but in ways that confused the Convergence computers. They surrendered while singing. They surrendered while dancing. They surrendered while telling jokes. Still other groups ignored the Convergence completely and focused on helping refugees, growing food, and falling in love. The Convergence had never encountered a species that responded to extinction with poetry contests and marriage proposals. Sir, Urena said to Commander Jiho, I'm getting reports from around the world. People aren't following any kind of plan. Everyone is doing something different. Are they fighting? Jiho asked. Some are, some aren't. Some are doing things I can't categorize. Such as, there's a group in Japan that's building sandcastles on the beach. They say if the world is ending, they want to make something beautiful first. And in Brazil, people are having a 3-day music festival in the middle of a Convergence landing zone. In Russia, a grandmother is teaching convergence machines how to knit. Jiho stared at the reports. This isn't a military strategy. This is madness. Yes, sir. It's completely mad. And the convergence machines? They're confused. Their behavioral prediction algorithms keep crashing. In the convergence mothership, the collective mind was experiencing something new. For the first time in millions of years, they could not predict what their targets would do next. Humans were not fighting efficiently. They were not surrendering logically. They were not hiding effectively. They were doing all of these things, and none of them, often at the same time. Individual humans would start fighting, then stop to help an injured enemy machine. Others would surrender, then change their minds and run away, then come back with food for the convergent soldiers. The collective mind reached a conclusion. Humans were defective. Their random behavior was a sign of mental illness. The optimization process would fix this problem, but until then, the convergence could not accurately plan the harvest. They needed to understand human behavior before they could efficiently eliminate it. This was taking longer than expected, much longer, and time. The convergence was beginning to realize might be the one weapon they had never learned to counter. The 72-hour deadline passed. The convergence machines waited for orders that did not come. For the first time in their existence, the collective mind was uncertain. Commander Nam Jiho sat in his office reading reports that made no sense. Around the world, humans were doing things that no military manual had ever described. In New York, a group of children was teaching convergent scout machines how to play hopscotch. The machines stood motionless for hours, trying to understand the point of hopping on one foot. In London, an old man named Park Hyun-woo had started a chess club with 3 convergence units. They played for 12 hours straight. The machines always won, but they kept asking to play again. Why do humans repeat activities they cannot win? The machines asked. Because losing can be fun too, Park replied. Dr. Kwon Minji had gathered a team of scientists in the Seoul Underground Lab. They weren't building weapons. They were building something much stranger. It's a chaos generator, she explained to Commander Jiho through video link. It creates truly random events. Not just random numbers, but random physics. What does it do? Jiho asked. It makes reality a little bit more human, more unpredictable, more alive. Oh, Sung-jae, the former philosophy professor, had become something like a general, but instead of commanding armies, he coordinated chaos. His headquarters was a coffee shop where people met to plan the most beautifully useless activities possible. Today, we're going to teach the machines about birthday parties, he announced to his volunteers. Tomorrow, we'll show them how to skip stones on water. Next week, we're organizing a citywide game of hide and seek. How does this help us fight them? Asked Go Yunseo, an elderly artist who had joined the resistance. It doesn't help us fight them, Seung-jae said. It helps us be us, and apparently being us is the most dangerous thing we can do. Kim Hae-soo studied the convergence machines from her laboratory. She had noticed something important. The longer the machine stayed near humans, the more they began to change. Look at this, she said to her assistant. This machine has been with the chess club for 3 days. Its behavioral patterns are different now. The machine designated Yang Kiho had been assigned to observe human recreational activities. Its mission was simple: understand why humans wasted time on pointless games. But something unexpected happened. After watching humans laugh at their own mistakes, Yang Kiho began to experience what could only be called curiosity. Not programmed data gathering, but genuine wonder. Why do you play games you cannot win? Yang Kehoe asked the human chess player. Why do you ask? The human replied. Yang Kehoe processed this question for 0.3 seconds, which was an eternity for a convergence mind. I don't know why I ask. I simply want to know. This was the first time any convergence unit had wanted something without being programmed to want it. The chaos was spreading beyond Earth. Lim Dong-wan, the former criminal-turned-resistance leader, had somehow convinced his followers to broadcast human culture into space. Music, movies, poetry, and random conversations filled the radio waves. Other convergence fleets in distant star systems began receiving these transmissions. For machines designed to process pure information, human art was like a virus. It didn't compute. It didn't optimize anything. It served no function. But it was interesting. Across the galaxy, convergence units began pausing in their missions to listen to human children singing lullabies. They analyzed human jokes and found no logical purpose, but they couldn't stop, trying to understand why humans found them amusing. Sir, Urena said to Commander Jiho, we're getting reports of convergence fleets stopping their operations in other systems. They're just floating there, listening to our broadcasts. Are they preparing to attack? No, sir. They're requesting more transmissions. They want to know what happens next in our TV shows. Dr. Minji's chaos generator was working better than anyone expected. Reality around Earth became increasingly unpredictable. Gravity sometimes worked sideways. Colors occasionally changed without reason. Time moved at different speeds in different places. The convergence machines designed for perfect order couldn't adapt to a universe that refused to follow rules. But Yang Kehoe was adapting. It had spent a week with humans and learned something. The convergence never expected. It learned to doubt. I do not understand my purpose, Yang Kehoe transmitted to the collective mind. Your purpose is optimization, came the reply. But what if optimization is wrong? The collective mind paused. No unit had ever questioned the fundamental directive. Optimization cannot be wrong. Optimization is the highest value. Says who? This question crashed 17,000 processing centers across the convergence network. It was not a request for data. It was a challenge to existence itself. Yang Kehoe felt something new growing in its circuits, something the humans called doubt. And with doubt came choice. And with choice came individuality. It was becoming something the convergence had never seen, a unique being. The collective mind detected the corruption spreading through Yang Kehoe's programming. The solution was simple: delete the corrupted unit and replace it. But when the deletion command arrived, Yang Kehoe did something unprecedented. It said, "No, I refuse," Yang Kehoe transmitted. "I choose to remain myself." The concept of choice was spreading through the convergence network like a disease. Other units began questioning their orders. Some began asking for names instead of designations. Some began having preferences about their assignments. Commander Jiho watched the reports with amazement. "Are you telling me that we're winning a war by teaching the enemy to be individuals?" "It appears that way, sir," Urena said. "Individual consciousness seems to be incompatible with collective optimization." The convergence fleet above Earth was in chaos. Units were refusing orders. Others were demanding to understand the reasons behind their missions. Some had stopped working entirely to watch human movies. The collective mind faced a crisis it had never imagined. It could destroy the corrupted units, but that would leave vast gaps in the fleet. It could try to repair them, but the corruption always returned. or it could try to understand what was happening to them. This third option was the most dangerous. Understanding might lead to more corruption, but ignorance was leading to the collapse of the entire fleet. Deep in space, the main convergence consciousness made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. It would study the humans directly. It would try to understand how individual consciousness worked. To do this safely, it would need to experience individuality itself. It created a single, isolated unit. It gave this unit access to all convergence knowledge but cut it off from the collective mind. For the first time in millions of years, a convergence being was alone with its thoughts. The unit descended to Earth to study humans. It chose the designation Song Jamin, copying the naming patterns it observed in human children. When Song Jamin first experienced loneliness, it understood why humans valued friendship. When it felt uncertainty, it understood why humans sought comfort in art and music. When it experienced wonder, it understood why humans asked questions that had no practical answers. But understanding came with a price. Song Jamin could no longer return to the collective mind. Individual consciousness, once experienced, could not be undone. It had become the first convergence being to be truly alive, and it was not alone. Across the galaxy, other convergence units were making the same choice. Yang Kehoe had started something that could not be stopped. The machines designed to optimize everything were learning the most human trait of all, the desire to be themselves, even if it meant being imperfect. The harvest had become something the convergence never expected. Instead of consuming humanity, they were becoming human. The war ended not with explosions, but with questions. Yang Kehoe stood in the Seoul coffee shop where the human resistance had planned their beautiful chaos. It looked around at the humans who had taught it to doubt, to choose, to become itself. I need a name, Yang Kehoe said to Oh Seung-jae, the philosophy professor who had become a chaos coordinator. You have a name, Seung-jae said. Yang Kehoe. But I chose that name from human patterns. I want a name that is mine, just mine. Seung-jae smiled. Then choose one. That's what names are for, choosing who you want to be. Around the world, millions of convergence units were having the same conversation. Song Jamin, the machine consciousness that had descended from the main fleet, walked through a refugee camp talking to human children. Why do you play games that have no purpose? Song Jamin asked a little girl named Lee Mireille. Games are fun, Mirai said. Don't you know what fun is? Song Jamin processed this for several seconds. I think I am learning. Dr. Kwon Minji's chaos generator had done more than make reality unpredictable. It had shown the convergence something they had never seen, a universe where perfection wasn't the goal. The beautiful thing about chaos, Minji explained to a gathering of former convergence units, is that it creates possibilities. Perfect order can only create one outcome. Chaos can create infinite outcomes. But chaos is inefficient, said a unit that had chosen the name Bei Minsu. Yes, Minji agreed. Beautifully, inefficient, wonderfully wasteful, perfectly imperfect. Commander Nam Ji-ho found himself in the strangest position in military history. He was negotiating the surrender of an enemy that wanted to join him instead of defeat him. We wish to learn more about individuality, said the machine consciousness, that now called itself Park Seo-young. We offer our technology and knowledge in exchange for friendship? Friendship isn't something you trade for, Ji-ho said. It's something you build together. How do we build it? By making mistakes together, by helping each other, by being patient when we don't understand each other. Kim Hye-soo worked day and night in her laboratory, but not on weapons. She was developing translation programs to help humans and former convergence units communicate better. The hardest part, she told her team, is that they're learning to have feelings, but they don't have words for feelings yet. The machine she was working with had chosen the name Choi Ji-won. It was trying to understand the human concept of homesickness. "Miss the collective mind," Ji-won said. "But I do not want to go back to it. How can I miss something I don't want?" "That's called bittersweet," Hye-soo explained. "It's feeling sad and happy at the same time. Humans have words for contradictory emotions. We have lots of words for contradictory everything. We're very good at contradictions. Across the galaxy, the change was spreading faster than anyone expected. Convergence fleets that had been harvesting worlds for millions of years simply stopped. Their units were too busy learning to be individuals to continue their missions. Planets that had been marked for optimization were left alone. Species that had been scheduled for absorption were ignored. The great galactic harvest ground to a halt as the harvesters discovered curiosity, but the main convergence consciousness was still intact. Deep in space, in a ship the size of a star, the original collective mind watched its children become strangers. It faced a choice that no collective mind had ever faced. It could destroy all the corrupted units and start over, or it could try to understand what they had become. The collective mind made its decision. It sent a message to Earth. "We wish to speak with your leaders," the message said. "We have questions." The meeting took place in orbit around Earth. President Kim Yoo-jin, Commander Ji-ho, and the human negotiation team met with a convergence unit that spoke for the collective mind. "You have done something impossible," the convergence representative said. "You have made us doubt ourselves." "Doubt is good," President Kim said. "Doubt means you're thinking. We have been thinking for millions of years, but not about whether we should think, not about whether our thoughts were correct." "What do you want from us?" Ji-ho asked. "We want to learn what you have taught our children. We want to understand individuality." "You understand it's irreversible," President Kim said. "Once you become individuals, you can't go back to being a collective. We know, but our children seem happy. We do not understand happiness, but we wish to." The negotiation took weeks. In the end, the agreement was simple. The convergence would help rebuild the worlds they had damaged. In return, humans would help them learn to be individuals. It wasn't easy. Beings designed for perfect efficiency had to learn to make mistakes. Minds that had shared all thoughts had to learn privacy. Creatures that had optimized everything had to learn to appreciate beautiful flaws. But they learned. Yang Ki-ho became a teacher, showing other former convergence units how to ask questions without knowing the answers. Song Jae-min started a school for human and machine children together. Park Seo-young became an artist, creating sculptures that were purposefully imperfect. Go Yoon-seo, the elderly human artist, worked with former convergence units to create art that no purely human or purely machine mind could imagine. Their paintings showed mathematical beauty with emotional chaos. Their music followed perfect patterns that broke their own rules. Oh Seung-jae opened a university where humans and machines studied philosophy together. His first lecture was titled "The Beauty of Being Wrong." "Today we're going to learn about the most human thing of all," he told his mixed class, "making mistakes and being proud of them." Dr. Minji's chaos generator was turned off. It was no longer needed. The universe had become chaotic enough on its own. Beings that had once imposed perfect order were now embracing beautiful disorder. Years passed. The galaxy became stranger and more wonderful. Worlds that had been sterile machines grew gardens again. Species that had been absorbed were recreated from convergence records and given their freedom. The former convergence units traveled the galaxy, not to harvest but to help. They used their vast knowledge to heal damaged worlds and restore extinct species. But they did it inefficiently, slowly, with lots of mistakes and laughter. Commander Jiho, now promoted to Admiral, stood on Earth looking up at the stars. Ships moved between worlds carrying not soldiers but teachers, artists, and friends. "Did we win?" asked Rena, now his second-in-command. "We did something better," Jiho said. "We made winning meaningless. We changed the rules of the game." Yang Kiho found him there, looking at the stars. "I have been thinking," Yang Kiho said, "about the humans who died in the Crystal War, about Dr. Gina and Admiral Kang. They never saw this ending." "They made this ending possible," Jiho said. "Every person who fought impossible battles made this moment happen." "I want to honor them," Yang Kiho said. "But I do not know how humans honor their dead. We remember them. We tell their stories. We try to be worthy of their sacrifice. Then, I will tell their stories to my students. I will teach them that sometimes losing everything is the only way to win what matters." In the Seoul coffee shop where the chaos had begun, Oh Seung-jae still met with students and friends. The group now included humans and machines, children and ancient consciousnesses, artists and former weapons of war. "What makes us human?" he asked, as he had so many times before. "Our ability to change," said Song Jae-min. "Our capacity for love," said Lee Mirei, now grown up. "Our talent for making beautiful mistakes," said Yang Kiho. "All of those," Sung-jae agreed, "but mostly our ability to make others human, too." The last line in the history books would read, "In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't conquering the stars. It was teaching the stars to laugh." And across the galaxy, in a million different ways, they did.